Very much welcome to today's MF CASR Lunch. You were hoping to see Liv Ingeborg in this chair. Sadly, she's not feeling well, so I'm just stepping in for today. So my name is Lars Iversen, but that's not important. What's important is that we have Anne Katrine the Hemmer Gudme to speak to us today, and her topic is Yahweh's signature scent, perfume and power in the Hebrew Bible. We know the setup: 30 minutes to talk, and then a conversation for another 30 minutes. And I won't spend any more of that time. So please, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here today. I apologize in advance for being a little bit, I have a bit of a cold, which is paradoxical in a way, since I'm going to talk about the sense of smell and of action. But I hope you can make sense of what I'm saying nonetheless. So I'm going to talk to you about Yahweh's signature scent, and I would like to start with something that's always a good place to start, is to read something from the Hebrew Bible, specifically 2 extracts from the chapter that I usually call the fragrant chapter, which is in Exodus chapter 30, where we find the recipes for the sacred anointing oil and the special incense mixture, which is to be used for the daily incense offerings in the sanctuary, as described in these priestly texts. So here we go. First, the anointing oil. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Take the finest spices of liquid myrrh, 500 shekels, and of sweet-smelling cinnamon, half as much. That is 250, and 250 of aromatic cane, and 500 of cassia, measured by the sanctuary shekel, and a hin of olive oil. And you shall make these a sacred anointing oil blended as by the perfumer. It shall be a holy anointing oil." So if you notice all of this list of ingredients, the finest spices, which is a collective term for all of these spices and aromatics, the liquid myrrh, which is a resin component, sweet-smelling cinnamon, an imported spice, cinnamon as we know it today, also aromatic cane, some kind of fragrant reed, cassia, which is a slightly cheaper version of cinnamon, which we also know today. All of these are imported luxury goods, aromatics used for this particular anointing oil. So remember that, please. And then we'll go on to the incense mixture. And people who are as nerdy as me like to call this Old Spice. So here we go. Sorry about that. So the Lord said to Moses, "Take sweet spices, stacte and onycha and galbanum, sweet spices with pure frankincense, an equal part of each, and make an incense blended as by the perfumer, seasoned with salt, pure and holy." So here again, we have the collective term, the sweet spices. Then we have stacte, which is basically drops in Hebrew, nataf, probably some kind of resin component as well. Onycha, which might be a mollusk component. We're not entirely sure about that one. And then galbanum, which is some kind of gum resin as well. And then, of course, the main ingredient in the incense mixture is levona, the pure frankincense, the resin from the plant Boswellia sacra, which is then made into what we would probably associate with incense today. And then this is to be made to an incense blended as by the perfumer. So these 2 components, if you like, is an integral part of the sanctuary ritual as described in the priestly texts here in Exodus chapter 30. The anointing oil is to be applied to the cultic furniture inside the sanctuary when the sanctuary is sort of turned into a place for ritual, but also to the personnel, if you like, inside the sanctuary. The priest, when they're initiated as priests, they will also be anointed with this sacred anointing oil. Also the Old Spice mix, as we called it, will be offered as an incense offering to Yahweh inside the holy, the outer room of the sanctuary, twice daily. So these 2 very luxurious aromatic components, the oil and the incense mix, both contribute to perfuming the sanctuary and turning it into a deliciously but also expensively scented space in these ritual texts. this, in a way, is part of what I call the olfactory cultic theology of the sanctuary in the priestly texts. It goes together with the smoke rising from the burnt offerings, the sacrifices on the altar for burnt offerings, which is repeatedly referred to in these texts as a pleasing odor, a reach nihoach, for Yahweh. So there are three really obvious or very stressed index components in these ritual texts that seem to stress the sense of smell: the anointing oil, the incense offerings, and the smoke rising from the sacrifices, the pleasing odor. So all of these components that stress olfaction, the sense of smell, have often been discussed by scholars of Hebrew Bible as ritual instruments, if you like, that stress divine presence in the sanctuary, both for a reader of a ritual text and also if we imagine these ritual texts being turned into some kind of practice. These three ritual measures would all contribute to a sense of perceiving divine presence, either smelling the smoke from the sacrifices and knowing that there is a divine recipient enjoying this pleasing odor, or by perfuming the sanctuary space and making it beautifully fragrant. So I think the case for interpreting these ritual measures as indications of divine presence is in a way already made, and I won't debate that today. I think there's a good case made for that already. It ties the priestly description of the sanctuary in Exodus and Leviticus in with other ancient Mediterranean cult systems, such as the Greek ritual system, to a certain extent the Egyptian one as well, where it's also stressed that deities are fragrant. So a fragrant space goes together with a fragrant divine presence in a way. So far, so good. So what I would like to spend my remaining 6.5 minutes on talking about is what else we can learn from these perfume components used in the priestly ritual texts. Because the thing is that in the Hebrew Bible as a whole, we only have two groups of texts in a way where perfumes and aromatics are described in any sense of detail. One group I've already introduced to you right now. This is Exodus 30 and the ritual texts that are about fragrance. The other group are texts that are usually associated with royalty, sometimes with the erotic, like the Song of Songs, and to a certain extent with sort of royal luxury and wealth, like, for instance, the Book of Esther. And traditionally in Hebrew Bible research, people have almost tacitly assumed that these groups of texts should be treated separately. Most often this is not discussed, but my hunch is that the reason for treating them separately is that because we have a ritual purity system in the priestly text in the Hebrew Bible, where different kinds of emission from the genitalia, both semen and menstruation, childbirth is also counted as an emission. We can laugh about that if we like, but also pathological emissions. But anything to do with sort of the reproductive area is categorized as a source of ritual impurity. And because of this, I think there is a tacit assumption and a tendency in Hebrew Bible scholarship to treat anything that has to do with sex and the erotic separately from the priestly texts. I'm not entirely sure that that's the right thing to do, to be honest. I think we're missing out on an important point. And that's why I would like to take you on a small tour of some of the texts that could be relevant for our understanding of the fragrant chapter in Exodus 30. So, for instance, Psalm 45, a royal psalm about the royal couple, where the king, the unnamed king, is described as the most beautiful of all men, but also wonderfully fragrant, and exactly his clothes are perfumed with some of those aromatic components that we've just met in the text about the anointing oil and the incense offering. Also in Proverbs 7, a text about erotic attraction and actually how to try to avoid it, the foreign woman has perfumed her bed linen with myrrh and frankincense to attract young men. In 1 Kings 10, we hear about King Solomon and how he gets a visit from the Queen of Sheba and how she brings a multitude of spices and fragrant luxury products as gifts for him. So here, these imported aromatic ingredients are clearly part of a royal diplomatic exchange and also part of creating royal prestige. In the Song of Songs, particularly in chapters 4 and 5, we get these beautiful descriptions of the two lovers, the man and the woman. And here, both the man and the woman are described using scent language. So creating an atmosphere of attraction, attractiveness, is also part of this, is also using these aromatic components. And again, we see the same aromatics appearing both in the cultic text and in the Song of Songs. And then, of course, Esther. Kristin is here today, so I couldn't leave without mentioning Esther and how she's prepared for royalty in a way by being put in a marinade of all the fine spices, the Boshamim, for no less than 3 months. I imagine she would have been just slightly raisiny when she came out of that, but probably very, very perfumed as well. So if we look at a collection of all of these texts, we can see that utilizing these aromas and fragrances is part in the Hebrew Bible of building a really strong profile of attractiveness, both female and male, so both feminine and masculine attraction, something to do with the sex and the erotic as well, definitely something to do with royal power, and definitely something to do with wealth. If we think how spices and fragrances can be used in the image making or branding, if you will, of a royal person in the Hebrew Bible, this actually does make a lot of sense, because not only are these ingredients for perfume and incense, not only are they incredibly expensive, but in order to secure a steady import of stuff such as incense, myrrh, and so on, you'd also have to be a pretty skilled ruler. You'd have to secure stable travel networks, trade networks, diplomacy, and so on. So actually mentioning huge amounts of aromatics is the perfect image building exercise for a royal person in this time and era. So back to Yahweh. So apart from telling us that the Yahweh's sanctuary in Exodus 30 is fragrant, and that this means that the deity is present in his sanctuary, what else does this extravagant use of aromatics and perfumes tell us about the deity who is in residence in this sanctuary? Well, it tells us in its own particular way that the deity who lives in this sanctuary is a royal God, a majestic God who is powerful and who is attractive, sexy in a way, because he smells incredibly good. So I think, just to sum up, we're missing out if we are not willing to let these two text groups have a conversation with one another, and to let the so-called royal or erotic texts of the Hebrew Bible inform our reading of the ritual text in Exodus 30, and thereby get a much fuller characterization of the deity who inhabits the fragrant sanctuary. Thank you.
Thank you.